Welcome to another episode of Distorted Opinions, where we talk all things music. I'm once again joined by Matt and Ted, and we've got another episode that could probably easily be multiple episodes. Today we're talking meet and greets. So I know, Ted, you've met a lot of bands. I know, Matt, you've met some bands. I've met a lot of bands. I know, Ted, you could probably go on for a long time. So how about I'll go ahead and start. I've kind of narrowed it down.
Sure.
If we're running a little close on time, I'll just pick my top two and then pass it to Ted. So I've done a lot of meet and greets over the years. Back in high school, my dad used to take me to Guitar Center, and Newbury Comics would often have bands and different artists come through. And I have fond memories of my dad picking me up early from school and bringing me to meet Stain, Chevelle, Zakk Wylde was another really cool one. But one of the coolest meet and greets that I've been on to date was with my all-time favorite guitarist from my favorite band ever, Kirk Hammett from Metallica. And he had been doing an art exhibit at the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem in 2017. And somehow I missed that he had done one earlier in the year. And somehow I found out about it and then caught wind that he was going to be doing another meet and greet. So the day that the tickets went on sale, I was frantically refreshing my browser to get tickets. And I'll never forget, I had talked to my boss, Nancy, and my coworker at the time, Amber, because they were also Metallica fans. And I said, would you guys want to go with me to this if I can get my hands on 3 tickets? And they were like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And Amber and I, the year prior, had gone to see Metallica, which I talked about in our concerts episode. And so I was like, all right, so I'm going to get these tickets. But I knew they were going to sell out quick. So I got them, and it was like, my office is on the 2nd floor and there's a spiral staircase you have to go down, and my boss is in the office below me, and I think she heard me scream in excitement and then dart down the stairs very loudly, and I'm like, guys, we're going to meet Kirk. And I was so super excited about it. So I met him in October of 2017. We got to check out his exhibit. He, if you don't know, collects movie posters, old horror movie posters, and he's got a massive collection. I guess his collection is so big that he actually has a warehouse somewhere in California that most of his posters are stored in.
What are you going to do with all the money that you earned as Metallica anyway? So, I mean, the royalties alone are just going to pay for a hobby. So, okay, movie posters.
True. I think his guitars are in a warehouse as well, some of them. So somehow they ended up working out this deal with him that they were going to put a bunch of his posters on exhibit. So the exhibit was called It's Alive, and everybody who went to meet him got one of these hardcover books, and basically it's got pictures and stories about all of the posters that were in the exhibit. So you get there for the meet and greet, and in an effort to streamline things, they hand you a piece of paper and tell you to put it in the book and write your name on it, so Kirk knows how to spell your name. And I thought, that's ingenious. So you get up there, you hand him the book, and he opens it up.
Kayla.
Pretty much. So this is...
Oh, that's awesome.
This is really the signed cover, inside cover of the book.
That's a big signature too. That's a big page.
It's like he's shouting, Kayla!
Pretty much. I mean, there's an exclamation point. That is excitement. So it was really cool. While he's signing it, he has a conversation with you, and I couldn't find the shirt that I wore. I know it's in my closet. I have a section of my closet that's all my band shirts, and I could not find the Metallica shirt that I wore to meet him, but they took a picture of everybody with him as well. They had a professional photographer. And of course, I did the one thing that I always tell people not to do when I'm taking pictures of them. Usually you tell people to kind of stick their chin out and up a little bit so it doesn't look like you have a second chin. Me, in my excitement, my coworkers said that I looked clearly like I was about to freak out, which I didn't feel like I was about to freak out, but apparently I looked like it to them. And so the picture, I got it back, and it's not terrible, but I'm like, maybe to a lesser degree. Maybe to a slightly lesser degree, but clearly I do look a little freaked out in the picture.
Well, it's Kirk Hammett. I mean,
yeah. I mean, my coworker had
one of your favorite bands.
For real, man. Like, I never thought in a million years I'd ever be meeting any of the guys from the band, and so to actually have the opportunity to meet Kirk was like a huge deal for me. And it was funny because the shirt that I wore, and I have a picture with him that I have the shirt and you can see it, but it's got this picture of the guys, and he started telling me the story behind the picture and how Ross Halfin had taken it, and Ross does a lot of their pictures, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a big, I'm a big concert photography fan. I know who Ross is. He's very well known, and he starts telling me about how like they were totally tanked the day that they took that picture, and it was like outside of the garage of a house they were staying in, and I'm like, oh my goodness, and I'm just like, again, I'm totally freaking out. Meanwhile, my boss and my coworker talked to him about, I think my coworker talked to him about the jacket that he was wearing, because you had to see the outfit that he had on. He had this jacket that, like, I can't even begin to describe it. It was so awesome and so Kirk Hammett. And the boots that he was wearing to go with it, it was just like, oh my God. So I'm pretty sure they talked to him about his jacket and his boots. Me, I'm like, freaking out. But, it was cool to meet him, but the exhibit was also really awesome. And I'm glad I had a chance to check it out. I don't know if it's ever going to come back through again. He has since taken it to some other cities throughout the country. And I think right now, well, I don't know if anybody can actually go to it, but I think they had it running somewhere in Canada. So he's kind of turned this into a thing that he's doing. But that was my really super awesome, like, top of the list, most awesome meet and greet that I've been on so far. There are plenty of others that I've been to that are very memorable, but I don't want to eat up the entire show just talking about my meet and greets. So with that, I know, Ted, you probably had a hard time narrowing down your meet and greets as well, because you've met some pretty awesome bands. Why don't you give us your narrowed down list of your favorite meet and greets?
Geez. Well, we had way too many. A lot of really cool things happened in order in the time period that I met these bands. You mentioned meeting, going to Newbury Comics and meeting bands. One of the coolest experiences I had was in 2005. I wound up going to get Disturbed's 10,000 Fists album cover signed, because the CD wasn't out yet.
Right.
But they give you the pamphlet and you can meet the band and get it signed. And I was with our friend Chris, and we were hanging out. We got in line, waited for a while, got the CD cover signed, and then afterwards, like, Chris, what are you doing? He's like, dude, we should totally go around the back of Newbury Comics and just see if we can get a picture of the band on the way out. We couldn't get a picture with the band while we were there. It was strictly just signing. Yeah, move along. Like, sure. And this was the particular day where Disturbed was headlining Local Bazooka.
Oh, nice.
At the Fitchburg Airport. Nice. So they were in town anyway. So Chris and myself went around behind Newbury Comics in like a little alleyway, and there's this van, and there were 3 other people, like just one other group of kids that were with us. And so it was just the 5 of us just standing around and just talking to the van driver while we're waiting for the band. And then they're like, whoever their handler was comes out, sticks his head out. He's like, you guys wait for a picture of the band? We're like, yeah. He's like, they're doing some shopping right now. They'll be right out. Like, all right, that's cool. So we're hanging out and trying to figure out, like, I'll talk to the band driver. Who else have you driven? Like, what celebrities, all this stuff. And then finally the band comes out, and I have a disposable camera in my pocket that I had brought just in case. And I wound up bringing that to Local Bazooka later in the day. But David Draymond's, he got his arm around my neck, like just completely like in, and then Chris is in the back with like the drummer, I believe, and put the picture up in a second if we could. But that experience is pretty wild. So not only to get the signing, but then just feel like you have this absolutely private moment with the band, because it was me and Chris and 3 other people, and there was no one else around. So
nice.
That was pretty cool.
Awesome.
To again, not completely take up all the time. I got to meet Static X, Wayne Static in particular. You got a picture with him. He was awesome. His hair was 8 feet tall, as you would imagine in all the pictures. So that was at Ozfest in 2007. They were on tour with that festival, and bought the CD Cannibal, and got the album signed by the whole band. And I had seen Static X. I saw them 3 times in total. But that particular time, getting to meet Wayne and then getting a really cool picture with him, which again we can put up. I actually have it framed in my office here, just because that was such a really cool moment. And with those meet and greets, you're only meeting the group for maybe 20 seconds, whatever. Right. So you don't get a lot of time.
Right.
So just if you can sort of gauge an interaction on such a short amount of time, but knowing how influential Static X was, who he was, and his passing, you kind of look at that pretty heavily. So that's another big one. Similarly, got to meet the band Hell Yeah, Family Values Tour in 2007. That one, as you know, Hell Yeah was a Damage Plan, Mudvayne supergroup.
Right.
So Vinnie Paul, Dimebag Darrell's brother, was the drummer, one of my favorite drummers of all time. And then not to mention Mudvayne. Like Mudvayne is such a classic band from our high school era. So getting to meet the whole band on their opening album and get the CD signed, and then watching all the tributes to Vinnie Paul on Loudwire or these other YouTube video recaps talking about his passing. Everyone talks about his genuine sincereness to want you to have a good time. And I completely felt that in the couple of moments I was able to experience with him and then get a picture with him. It's like, hey, can I get a picture with you? And I didn't get a picture with anyone else in Hell Yeah. I was there for Vinnie Paul, honestly. And he's like, hey, hell yeah, man, come on around. It was so relaxed. I'm like, this dude's, Pantera, Damage Plan, now Hell Yeah, like megastar drummer, and just super chill. So that whole experience was completely eye-opening. So fortunately, I got to see him play a few times before he passed, but that's another one. Good experience in the 30 seconds you have, but then they pass away, and you're really happy that you had them.
We lost so many good rock stars in the past, like decade, 10, 20 years.
I think of Chris Cornell. Like, I never got to meet him, but like just a lot of heavy hitters we lost in recent years for sure.
Right.
I agree.
And then the last one that I have is really not at a concert. I was able to, if you may or may not be aware, Corey Taylor from Slipknot writes books. He's released a few books. And then Randy Bly from Lamb of God, my favorite band, also released a book about his experience in prison in the Czech Republic when he was arrested falsely. I mean, he's been acquitted of the charges, but he wound up writing a book about that experience. So they were doing a signing at the Harvard bookstore in 2016. So that one, my wife and I went out, we stood in line for an hour, and the bookstore said it was the longest line that they'd ever seen at the bookstore for a signing since Hillary Clinton.
Wow.
Which is kind of outrageous. A lot of metalheads, a lot of black t-shirts. I was wearing my Lamb of God shirts. But so I was able to get a copy of Dark Days for Randy, and but on the other end, I actually got some time to actually talk to him as he signed it, and get to interact, get to crack a couple jokes. It was, like I said, a super long line. And then the Corey Taylor one, You're Making Me Hate You, kind of another scribble. But yeah, both of these definitely was a really cool experience. And then, so Randy was first. There was a woman working at the bookstore that took your camera so she could take the pictures, so you can just interact, and someone else is just hitting the rapid fire on photos. It was awesome.
That's awesome.
So no stress on the pictures. I got too many. So that was really cool. And then so got to do the signing with Randy, moved over to Corey, got that signed. And then I was like, can I get a picture with both of you guys? And they're like, yeah. Like, no big deal. And so Corey puts his arm around me, and then my wife is there too. And then he's like, Randy, we're waiting for you. And he's like, oh. And then he just like jostles over, and he's still got a Sharpie in his hand. And in the pictures, I swear he's going to like mark me incidentally, because I'm pretty sure the cap is not on it. But the photo is outrageous, as hopefully we can show in this video version. But it was the best, probably, maybe minute that I was able to have between the two of them. Super chill. Both of them, I believe, are sober now, so they're just drinking coffees. So they're far more stable. Sure. Rock star life kind of can hit you hard with the alcohol and partying, but that experience was probably there's the most recent, but one of the coolest. So
that's awesome.
I think I've done enough rambling, and again, I've met plenty more, but I was trying to narrow it down. But Matt, what do you have on your list for today?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually just gathering up some of my notes, while you guys were talking and whatnot. But with you guys having all these, a bunch of concerts and all these meet and greets, I'm sure that later on down the road we'll be having multiple episodes with meet and greets. Unfortunately for me, I've met a lot of celebrities in meet and greet forms versus bands. Specifically, one of them, Mark Boone Jr., who was a complete idiot from Sons of Anarchy, but that's a whole nother topic and probably not doable for our type of show. But yeah, he was just an idiot. Anyway,
now
and we
curious.
Just lost one fan. If
yeah, just one fan. And hey, if he hears us, yep, you're an idiot. So, anyways, but one of the things that a couple bands I actually came to my mind was I'm actually gonna take this in completely 180. So since we're on one side of the world, I'm going to kind of flip it. So we're talking really a lot about classic rock, the hard rock, the metal. I'm kind of going to switch it over and kind of go a little bit the indie and the new retro wave. And because those were really the only bands at that time that I meet and greet. So first and foremost, I'm going to start off with Tyler Ramsey. He was the guitarist for this band called Band of Horses. And a few years ago, Emerson College has actually, they still have it to this day, 88.9. And they have this kind of indie, all this kind of new wave, pop wave in indie type of genres. And one day I was listening to this band and they were saying, yep, this is, Band of Horses. And the first song I heard was No One's Ever Gonna Love You. So I'm going, wow, this is actually kind of, pretty nice. It kind of reminded me a little bit of bluegrass and indie at the same time. So kind of jumping ahead, you got into this band called Band of Horses. Everything. What's it called? I believe it's what was it? What was that band called? Oh, I'm sorry. Not Everything. Oh, Everything All the Time wasn't the band. It was actually the album. And ever since then, been following them. So jumping ahead. Tyler Ramsey, he's doing this solo tour. And I remember seeing a Facebook post and being like, hey, yeah, come see Band of Horses. So I was like, wow, this is a really good opportunity to go, meet him and see him too and see his solo stuff. So he was playing at Club Pessim in Somerville. I believe Somerville or Cambridge. And, when the little thing to know about this venue is when you go in there, it is it's a kind of like this hippie type of vegan type of place. Ted, you would love this type of place. And going into it, you could order drinks, you could order food, and the stage is right there. It is first come, first serve. So when he started playing, literally I was probably about maybe 3 feet from this guy, and he just played all these tunes from his solo albums. And at the very end, I noticed that he was sticking around. So I'm with a couple of friends, and I'm like, hey, we should just stay for a little bit, because I have a feeling he's going to come out and just kind of like want to talk with us. And nevertheless, he came out the back and he was just talking. So managed to go and talk with him. And at that time, just because that, the gentleman-like type of feature, I'm always one to go ahead and say, hey, you know what? If I had the opportunity, I'll buy the band a drink and say, hey, great job, great performance. And this guy was drinking wine. So I'm like, wow, okay, interesting, drinking wine. So he's not a beer drinker, he's a wine guy. So talk with him. And there was one question I had for him. I was like, hey, listen, when you played on the album, Everything, Everything All the Time, there's a song called Detlef Sheriff. And it's actually a song based off of a basketball player's name. I said the chord progression, the finger picking progression of the guitar playing, I said, it's just fascinating. I said, it's actually one of my favorite songs off the album. How did you ever come up with it? And he was just like, listen, he's like, back then, I don't know what Ben, the lead singer's name. He said, I don't know what Ben was coming up with. All I know is that one day he was just like, yep, we have these lyrics and I have this chord. Put them together, and we're just going to name it after a basketball player. So needless to say, it was a really interesting kind of story to be like, wow, okay, so you just were like, hey, let's just, I don't know. It's like, if I were to go ahead and after this recording, write a song and just all of a sudden be like, all right, I can't think of a song, so I'm just going to call it Macaroni and Cheese. It's just, and it could be something about like driving down the street. I don't know. It was really unique, very, very customary. And he was just an overall chill guy. He is a big guy too. I mean, this guy's like 6'5". So when I stood next to him and we got a picture,
you were at his belt buckle.
I was just kind of like, so, and I'll, hopefully, again, this video will, I'll be able to show a picture of it. So that was really unique, seeing a former guitarist of a band and seeing his solo work on top of him playing some other stuff from that album. So that was great. And the second band was actually last year. I saw them. So new retro wave. I'm personally a huge 80s guy. I mean, we're talking Karate Kid. We're talking about Knight Rider. We're talking about Miami Vice. I mean, everything, it. For those video game, nerds out there, hey, GTA Vice City. Can't go wrong with it.
Good soundtrack.
The soundtrack is outrageously good.
Yeah. Guns N' Roses. I'm sure at one of the episodes that we talked about a Guns N' Roses show. A real quick story with finding out who FM84. So this band was called FM84. How ironic. And I found them accidentally through a friend who introduced me to Gunship. So when I was listening to Gunship on Spotify, it said, oh, hey, these are bands that you might know. And FM84 came out, and I said, wow, this is really great. So started listening to that album. That album that they came out with during that time was entitled Atlas. And, excuse me. And after that, I found out that they were coming to the New England area, all the East Coast. So they're originally from California. So I started following them on Facebook, and they're very, very interactive. So, if you like something on their Facebook, they'll respond back. So I really, really respect those types of bands that really integrate with their bands, especially, who have a lot of respect for them. So they start playing, they came out here June 20th. They came and played over at the Royale in Cambridge. And I remember going there with the same group of friends that we went to go see Tyler Ramsey with, and had some food there, had some drinks, and then we go to there. FM84 is a kind of a new retro wave that, they have guest vocals come on. So at that time, Atlas was recorded with a majority of the songs from the singer named Ollie Ride. And this guy's vocal pitch is just absolutely phenomenal. He takes like falsetto pitches to a whole nother level. And for anyone that likes type of 80s music in today's time frame, definitely recommend checking out that album, the Atlas. But we're there, this guy comes out, and it's not really a crowded type of area. So, normally when you're going to some of these shows, it's kind of, especially if it's on the floor, general admission, it's shoulder to shoulder. This time it really wasn't. I want to say maybe a max of about 100 people. So it was kind of understanding to know that this is the band that no one really knew, but I knew. So got up there.
So you were fanboying really hard.
Pretty much. Oh yeah, big time. I think the only thing I was missing was like oh god, the only thing I was missing was just like 80s attire. But hey, you never know. But went up there, was about 6 to 10 feet from the stage, and they played all these songs, and it was a phenomenal night. So show ends, going great. Next thing you know, I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and buy a shirt. And I bought a shirt again. And all of a sudden the band comes out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, they actually came out. And a lot of people didn't realize that this was the band coming out because, again, they're just like, okay, it's another band that's coming around the time. So my friends and I were like, hey, let's go talk with the guys. So we talked with the guys, really awesome, very chill. And they actually happened to see some of our posts on Facebook. So they're like, hey, wait a minute. Didn't you like this post about, we were coming around the town? I was like, yes. I was like, yes, I am. So they were like, it's very, very chill. So I was like, hey, listen, if you don't mind, could I was like, do you guys have like a set list? They said, yeah, actually, here you go. So the guitarist gave me the set list. I had the band sign the set list. Then I said, I hate to be this guy. I said, but can we get a photo then? Very chill. Ollie, he was like drenched in sweat. He actually kept apologizing to me and my friend. They're like, hey, I'm so sorry that we're sweating. I was like, dude, I don't care. I'm a musician myself. I completely understand. So we got this photo. And I'm holding like the set list right here. I'm like, so just excited. So again, they were very chill guys. And again, I was telling them, I said, hey, if you guys are staying around, we're actually going back downstairs to grab a couple more drinks. If you guys are around, hey, just let me know. I'll throw it on my tab and get to know who you guys are as a band. But they actually had to jump in and go to their next show in New Hampshire. But that was just an overall great experience, and I'm sure all three of us can relate that, when we're listening to all of these songs that we get intrigued with through the artists, through the bands, and then we start kind of like feeling with the song and kind of being one with the song. And then finally you see them live, and then that kind of like cherry on top to be like, hey, why don't you go meet the band that actually played the songs, that played them live, that played them on a hard disc or tape, depending on, what you have. Okay. And realizing like, this is a surreal moment. So, I'm sure that we could all relate again, that it's an undescribable feeling to meet your music idols or your favorite bands in person,
there's definitely a pedestal that gets built for listening to music for as long as we all have for all the bands that we just talked about. Like, definitely, you kind of, do wind up building that pedestal, and you think that they're, more than just a person. And then when you meet them, it's like, you hope that they're going to be cool, because I've definitely had my fair share of like jerks of musicians that I've met. And I'm like, well, that was a waste. So these days, like, even when I was meeting Randy and Corey, I'm like, please be cool, please be cool, please be cool. And they were. Oh, so awesome. Especially Corey Taylor.
I mean, if you go on YouTube and you see this guy playing live, he's just a very chill guy. He's just like a, for hard metal bands like, Slipknot or even Stone Sour. He's the type of guy that's just it's like he flips the switch, and when he talks with fans, he's like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah, no, it was completely 180 than what you would expect. And then part of me is like, well, how many years of performing a Slipknot gets as much anger out as you may have had in the early days?
Exactly.
Right. Granted, whatever the drugs and alcohol were doing at the time too. So whatever.
That's amazing.
But yeah,
for sure. No, I'll tell you, when I met Kirk, I was also really glad that he was a down to earth guy. I mean, he chatted with everybody who came through that line, and they did have, because you had to buy tickets, there were no more than, I want to say, 100 people at that meet and greet, but he stopped in between and talked to every person as they came through. So it was really awesome. I only wished that when I shook his hand, I gained like 10% of his guitar playing abilities by shaking his hand. Obviously not the case, but still very cool. And yeah, absolutely. We could, I'm sure, talk about this for hours and hours. I've got a lot of great stories about some other bands I've met, and I don't think I think I've been fortunate that none of the bands that I've met have ever been jerks. They've all been very nice.
I wish I could say the same.
Well, maybe that's a whole other show. Yeah. Bands that weren't so nice. I know Matt's got somebody on his list already. So
if we want to talk about celebrities and idiots,
this is a music podcast.
It just might be a distorted opinion.
He said the name of the show.
But guys, I know that we're going to be coming up on our time and whatnot. So like every episode, we talk about a song of the week. So right. Ted, let's jump to you. What's your pick for the week?
Well, I mentioned Static X earlier, so I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to stick with the Cannibal album, and for a particular song, I'm going to go Destroyer.
Okay.
That one, I feel like is just a radio hit in itself. Just really catchy. Most of their songs is basically like disco metal, if you will. There's a lot of good groove in most of their songs. So I'm gonna have to say Destroyer as my pick for the week.
That's awesome.
Kayla, what did you have?
Well, since I mostly talked about my meet and greet with Kirk, I got to talk about one of my all-time favorite Metallica songs off of the And Justice for All album, which again,
Saint Anger.
Trash can drum.
Way before Saint Anger, my friend. Way before. Some people will tell you it's the last album that they considered to be a good Metallica album. I disagree. I like their newer stuff. Saint Anger is one album that I really have not listened to very much. Not one of my more favorite Metallica albums. But And Justice for All is a great album. There's a lot of great tracks off there. And one of my favorites and one of my all-time favorite Metallica tracks is To Live Is to Die, which was their instrumental tribute to Cliff Burton, their late bassist, who died in a bus accident. And if you haven't checked that out, it's a more obscure track unless you're a fan. It's not something I think they ever really played on the radio, but it's an awesome instrumental track. I think it's one of the last albums where they did an instrumental. The first 4 albums, they had an instrumental track on each album, and then they stopped doing it after that. But that is my pick of the week. That's an awesome song. If you haven't heard it, I highly recommend checking it out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that is both those albums are amazing too, by the way, from Static X and Metallica.
Absolutely. Matt, what was your pick for this week?
So
I know you kind of mentioned an album in your talk about one of your meet and greets.
Indeed, and actually that's gonna be actually my album and song of the week. So kind of going back to that '80s vibe, kind of jumping into DeLorean, hitting 88 miles an hour, and going back in time. FM 84 is a debut album, Atlas. Specifically, one song, "Running in the Night." When you listen to this song, it is one of those songs where it's a 70-degree night. If you got a hatchback, throw that puppy down, or top, throw it down, and just cruising down a highway and blaring it. It's like, it's in just. I can't even describe it. It's just
you look like you're at a loss for words.
Yeah, I highly recommend really listen to it. I mean, it's such a groove type of song. It's a very chill song, and even the music video. It's very bland, but just the music is it's very Miami Vice. That's all I could really say. It's very. It's very, very chill. I mean, I'm just losing words. So, that's
good. We're leaving
that's a song. FM 84's, "Running in the Night" from their debut album Atlas.
Awesome.
That's where, and the guys, I know that we're coming up on our time. Listeners, what's your favorite meet and greet? Come and tell us on our Facebook, and even email us too.
That's right. Well, you can email us at distortedopinionsshow@gmail.com. And
distortedopinionsshow@gmail.com.
That's right. There's 2 S's. Distorted Opinions Show.
Oh, Distorted Opinions Show.
That's right.
At gmail.com.
Right. Distorted Opinions was taken, guys. Sorry. We had to go with Distorted Opinions Show.
We try.
Oh, no.
But probably another celebrity idiot.
Perhaps. We'll never know unless we email them, I suppose. But if you want to get a hold of us, I don't recommend sending email to distortedopinions@gmail.com. Email distortedopinionsshow.
Someone's just totally spamming that now. We've done it.
If you find out who it is, we'd love to know. And on that note, don't forget to follow us on Facebook for extras and updates on future shows. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.